institution. So I thank all of you very much for being here. I want to just briefly talk. I think we've established that you feel that this is a violation of conscience. I'd like to just quickly go down the panel and ask each one of you, how do you perceive this new rule? And I want to clarify, first of all, before I ask you my question, the HHS rule was not changed. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So let's establish that for the record, that despite this accommodation, the rule hasn't been changed. So, and it was a verbal, as you mentioned, nothing was put in writing, which is always of concern. So, but I want to now ask each one of you, how would you see this rule that has not been changed, that violates conscience rights? How do you see that affecting the missions of each one of your churches? Bishop, we could begin with you.
First of all, it does not remove the mandate, and as a result, it's still a great intrusion into the freedom of our churches. And besides that, we think it violates the Religious Freedom Restoration Act because it substantially burdens our religious freedom by forcing us, indirectly, but nonetheless forcing us to provide the so-called preventive services in violation of our teaching, and it also is simply unworkable because many religious entities are self-insured, and as a result, we are not only the employer but the insurer, and so then it directly involves us in providing the prescribed services.
Thank you, Bishop. And for the remaining members of the panel, do you anticipate that there will be fines or penalties that you will have to face because of this?
Well, the penalties are variegated and applied over time, but we could face multi-million, tens of dollars of fines, according to what our preliminary research has shown, by should we fall out of the grandfather clause in some fashion. Aside from that, this entire thing has already cost us a lot of money because we were not able to take the steps, cost-saving steps. We had to freeze everything already when the health legislation was on the table and passed.
And Dr. Mitchell, do you anticipate that it will affect the mission of all of the institutions and the mission going forward?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Southern Baptist, my own denomination, is a free church. That is to say, we are not unlike our Catholic friends. We are not. We don't have a magisterium. Every church is an autonomous body. 16.8 or 17 million members in 5,000 or so denominations. I can tell you this, because we're a free church, and because we are so committed to a free state, because, as I tried to indicate in my comments, our genesis in America was committed to that freedom of conscience and liberty of religious expression, tens of thousands of us, maybe hundreds of thousands of us, would be very willing to spend nights in jail for the sake of the preservation of religious liberty. It's not just our coffers that are at risk, it is our very freedom.
Thank you. Rabbi, I'm over time. If we could just ask 2 quick answers so we can get you in the record.
My concern, Congresswoman, is both for the objective religious freedom rights of everyone in this country, but also I'm quite worried about the long-term implications when I see an administration feeling free to say, first of all, what a religious denomination's tenets require and do not require. And I'm also greatly concerned about the long-term implications when an administration declares that a particular organization is not a religious organization precisely because they are motivated, even in a situation where that organization is motivated by its faith, to reach out to people beyond their faith.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchell?
Yeah, the thing that concerns me is that if they don't see this as a religious liberty issue, what do they see as a religious liberty issue? And where do they stop? What I see here is a hollowing out of what the concept of religious liberty is, almost to the point where eventually it'll be non-existent.
I thank you all very much, and I yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you. The Chair recognizes Ms. Maloney for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I thank all of you for your work and for being here today. I have serious concerns that the issue we are focusing on today, whether women should have access to contraceptives in their insurance coverage, is only a very small part of a broader campaign to attack the use of contraceptives generally for women across this country. For example, right now in 14 states, in this year, activists have been pushing initiatives to amend state constitutions to define an embryo as a person from the second of fertilization. Voters have already rejected fertilization personhood laws 3 times, twice in Colorado and once in Mississippi. The effect of these initiatives would be to criminalize certain birth control methods. So my question to the panelists is a general question, is whether you agree that we should outlaw any form of contraception starting at the moment of fertilization. And if I could get a brief answer from Bishop Laurie and then Reverend Harrison and all down the line.
The pointed issue here is whether or not a church that teaches the sacredness of life from the beginning or opposes contraception or sterilization on moral grounds should be forced to pay for it, not whether or not it should be illegal.
But do you consider birth control pills to fall in that category? In other words, would you favor making the use of birth control pills illegal in this country? Reverend Harrison?
No, I would not, but neither do we include those abortion-producing medications as birth control.
When you say abortion-inducing medications, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to those medications that can cause a fertilized egg or an embryo to be aborted.
Is that so-called Plan B?
Yes, Ella and Plan B.
Well, what about IUDs, Dr. Mitchell? Do you believe that they should be illegal?
We believe that they are contrary to our view of the sanctity of human life because they allow fertilization, but they prevent implantation. And we believe that human life begins at conception, not at implantation.
Well, what I understand from the administration's proposal, and from what I understand from the public comment in opposition to his proposal, was that you do not want to pay for these services. And under his proposal, you would not pay for these services. They would be absolutely separate in an insurance plan. Now it seems that you're saying that no women should have access to them and that they should be criminal. And what are your comments on that? I mean, I support religious freedom. I support every type of religion in America. But I do not support imposing my religious beliefs or anybody else's on anybody else.
In fact, the cost of providing those services are borne someplace, either in the premiums that religious entities pay, or they are borne because our plans are self-insured, and therefore we are the insurer as well as the employer, or because we have religious insurers. In other words, these so-called accommodations were made without reference to the real world that the church operates in, and as a result, they still entail us in cooperating with this and in paying for it.
But I would say with all respect that in a pluralistic society where we all have different beliefs, I, for one, am opposed to the war in Afghanistan, but my tax dollars are supporting the war in Afghanistan.
Congressman.
May I continue, please, sir? I support, I'm opposed to, many Americans are opposed to capital punishment, yet their dollars are supporting capital punishment. So in many ways, when we live in America, and it's a total society, then we're all part of it. And I believe that the President bent over backwards, or rather the administration, to make this separate. And I would just like to conclude by saying that although I respect your right to have your own opinions about birth control, I really do believe and think that the majority of Americans do not share them, and they should be entitled to have their beliefs too. I yield back.
Thank you. With that, I yield to Mr. Jordan.
I thank the Chairman. I want to thank our witnesses for coming today. Doesn't this just this ruling get to the very heart, the very foundation of what America is about? You think about this country, this experiment in freedom we call America. People came here because in Europe they said, you got to practice your faith a certain way. And they said, no, we don't. We're going to go to America where we can do it the way we think the good Lord wants us to do it. And that very fact is fundamental to what we call this great nation of America. So this gets right at the heart of what we are as a country, what we are as a people, what the founders envisioned this nation would offer its citizens. Isn't that what, forget all this other talk we've been hearing from the other side. This is fundamentally what's at stake here, the very heart and soul of what America is about.
Certainly that's the glory of our country. Religious freedom is the first of the freedoms in the Bill of Rights, and it is really the source.
But I would say even before the First Amendment, this is the citizens of this country understood this is what America was going to be about. Yes or no, Bishop?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Reverend?
In my position over the last 10 years, I've had to travel all over the world, 40 or 50 countries or more, and every time I return home, I want to kneel down and kiss the ground.
Thank the good Lord you live here.
Because of the blessings that we enjoy in this country, and I will stand personally for and fight for the rights of every single citizen in this country to believe and act accordingly.
And this administration is putting that very precept, that very principle in jeopardy.
I will fight for, give my sons up to fight for. I have 2 sons, no daughters, and sacrifice everything I have for the sake of guaranteeing the rights of every single citizen in this country.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchell, yes or no?
Jordan, I think this issue does focus very, very clearly the issue of religious liberty,
Yep.
whatever the other issues may be.
Thank you, Rabbi.
That's right, Congressman. This is an issue of religious liberty, and only an issue of religious liberty, that brings us here today.
Yep. Dr. Mitchell.
This is what America is about. And if we let this go, we're in trouble.
Okay, I want to play a tape for you. And I want to just change gears a little bit. I want to play a tape what the President said. And I want to see if you think he's kept his promise and honored what he said he was going to do with the overall Obamacare legislation. Play the tape if you would, please.
So let me begin by saying this to you and to the American people. I know that there are millions of Americans who are content with their health care coverage. They like their plan, and most importantly, they value their relationship with their doctor. They trust you.